Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, and you should know that this is going to be my final news show for this week. I am headed to Daytona Beach tomorrow for a disc golf tournament that will take place on Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. To use a Western Pennsylvania term, it's going to be muggy. M-U-G-G-Y. I hope my 45-year-old, almost 46-year-old body and mind can stand it. This will be the fourth year in a row that I'll be playing over there. I think I'm prepared. Been playing in the hot weather over here on the Gulf Coast, so it should be about the same over there on the Atlantic Coast, but we'll see. Going to have an umbrella. I have a little cart that I have my bag on, and it holds an umbrella, so I'm going to have that bad boy out. Probably going to have a whole gallon of water with me, that although I know I don't think it's going to be able to remain cold the whole time, but just having water, period, is enough. It doesn't have to be cold to keep you hydrated. So this will be my first trip actually out of town to do a disc golf tournament, to play a disc golf tournament since Labor Day weekend last year. And I've just, as you know, I've talked about it. Those of you who listen for a while, that I've kind of took a step back for about 4 months at the beginning of this year, and for several different reasons. But that's where I'm headed. So I'm sure the powers that be at Red State Talk Radio will play probably an old show. Maybe exactly this show. I don't know what they'll pick out. I'll leave that up to them for tomorrow night. And then we'll be back ready to do things on Monday. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to, I'm doing an interview for my other show, America's Missing Podcast, tomorrow. Once I get to Daytona Beach, on the phone with a woman who is going to offer a lot of insight into a case that Melissa and I will be covering on Monday. So I'm looking forward to that. And by the way, you can hear the next America's Missing Podcast show on this weekend on Red State Talk Radio on the Encore channel. And I appreciate Red State Talk Radio for playing it. So no show, no new show tomorrow. It'll be a repeat. So let's get to this show. We still got to do this show for the next 50-some minutes. I'm coming to you, starting the recording of this, while the FBI director, James Comey, is still in front of Congress, in front of the House members in that committee. As you would expect, the room is packed. Everybody shows up. The photographers show up. The videographers show up. It is the place to be in Washington, D.C. today. And my opinion of it, just in what I watched online live, I'm going to say I watched about 20 minutes of it. I'd say 20 minutes at least, but probably not 40 minutes. Is that it seems that Hillary Clinton going to get away with the "I didn't know what I was doing" defense. She's going to get away with the "what? Little old me understand how this stuff works" defense. Which is not a surprise to me, and it's exactly the reason yesterday that I told you that among many, many, many different reasons that she was going to get away with this, and I've been saying this to you for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily that she's getting away with it in the court of public opinion. We know that her dishonesty numbers are up there. In fact, they're only she and Donald Trump's, both of their numbers are up there, which should tell us something about the way we pick leaders in this country. So it seems that the FBI has a lower standard, or has a much more, they have a much more acceptance of dishonesty than the public does. Probably, I mean, the only way that Hillary gets up to those numbers is if a lot of Democrats think the same way. But they're going to still go vote for her. Just like a lot of people don't like Donald Trump, and they're going to go vote for him. It works both ways. I know that all of you Republicans out there who are outraged, how can these Democrats think that she's so dishonest, but they're going to go vote for her in November? Well, how about you? How about you? What do you think of Donald Trump? You think he's this, you think he's that, you think he's this bad thing, but you're going to go vote for him anyway too. Man, that really works. Really works. The problem I see with all of this, just taking Hillary Clinton out of it, is that it seems to me James Comey, who I've been told is a lifelong Republican, is that he didn't like, or the FBI doesn't like, the statute, S-T-A-T-U-T-E, not statute, that's in place regarding this particular occurrence of breaking the law. Because the law that's been on the books for a long time says that even if you even just have top secret material on your private computer is enough to get you in trouble. That's enough. It doesn't, that's what the statute says. That's not what James Comey was saying today. And in fact, he started out by the very reason of saying that that law is wrong, that it needs to be rewritten. Because during his testimony, Comey kept coming back to the point of, we don't believe that she intended to do anything with this. There has to be intent. The law says on the books, the one that's written says there doesn't have to be intent. James Comey is saying there is. Now that, as you can see, that would present quite a problem. Because I'm not even going to stand here and tell you that Hillary Clinton is a traitor. That she wanted this top secret information to get into the wrong hands. I don't believe any of that. And any conservative on Red State Talk Radio, or any conservative media member out there who tries to tell you that is just trying to inflame you. And I see those memes on my Twitter feed, on Facebook, and elsewhere. I personally don't believe that. I think that she knew that, but once again, it doesn't even matter. Whether she knew she was supposed to be doing that or not is not relevant to the law. And it kind of makes sense given what the average person experiences on a daily basis. You go from a state where the speed limit is 75 miles an hour into another state where the top speed is only 65. You get caught doing 77 and a 65. You can't claim, well, I didn't realize that the speed limit changed. That is not a defense. Just because you didn't have an intent to break the law doesn't mean you didn't break the law. James Comey is saying differently. But on top of that, he is also saying that Hillary Clinton played, well, stupid little old me, late 60s. When I was born, computers didn't even exist. I didn't even start using a BlackBerry till I became Secretary of State. I haven't driven a car since 1991. It seems that all worked. But also, as I've told you from the beginning, and this is something that James Comey probably doesn't have the courage to say, maybe he's saying it right now as I'm talking, but I doubt it, is that he just should say, frankly, committee members, frankly, the FBI just doesn't want to get involved in presidential politics. No matter if Hillary Clinton broke the law or not. Now that would be the truth. And if James Comey would say that, then I would have total respect for him. But he's not going to do that. And and being that he doesn't mention it proves that he was thinking about it, because that's the first thing I think of when I think about all of this. And that it's one of those situations, and I've talked about this before, that the fact is so obvious and the person doesn't bring it up makes it obvious that they're thinking about it. What do they call that? Is that the elephant in the room analogy? Is that what that is? Maybe not. But it would be like you're sitting in a room, really nice room, and then there's an elephant sitting in front of all of you, and you continue to have talks with the people next to you. There's like 10 people in a room, you're all talking, an elephant's sitting there, and not one of you brings it up. It's not because none of you don't see it. It's just that it's so obvious that nobody talks about it. This is the case with Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm hoping that at least one of those congressmen or congresswomen, representatives, maybe just say that, will bring that up to him. Did you not want to bring any charges against her just because she's the presumptive Democrat nominee? I'm hoping that question was asked. I didn't hear it in the time that I was watching. I would ask it. Can you just be straight with me? I know we're all talking about the law. This is how I'd do it. Me, representative from Florida. FBI Director Comey, I just want to get this out of the way. Being that nobody else has brought it up, but I know that everybody else is thinking about it, can we just put the statutes to the side? Can we just put who she is to the side? Can we just put all the secret, the security stuff to the side? I just want to ask you, and I want to get you on the record for this, if you don't mind. Is it just the plain truth that you didn't want to charge Hillary Clinton with anything because she's the presumptive Democrat nominee? And before you answer, because by bringing charges against her, your thought would be that would be handing over the election to the other party. Was that ever a consideration in choosing not to charge her with anything, and now your prosecutors will not be charging her with anything? I'd like to see his answer to that. I'd like to see his facial expression. I'd like to see his body language. I'd like to hear the words that he would use. I'd like to see what his eyes did. Would he be able to look me in the eye as he answered? Because that's what I continue to believe. I believe this from the time the investigation started, and now that it's come full circle, that he's up in front of Congress testifying, I still think the same thing. Now, you conspiracy theorists out there are going to be saying, well, Clinton must have something on him. You know, maybe they secretly put child porn on his computer, and if he doesn't do the right thing, they're going to expose him. Okay. I guess I can't necessarily argue with there's no facts to support that, but we know, I know how you conspiracy theorists do shows after shows after shows of things that never come true, but you sure do get a lot of listeners. You're certainly putting a lot of BS out there. But that the political side of this never comes up, the just straight political facts of it, tells me that everybody's thinking about that. Because if I can think about it, I'm sure one FBI investigator around lunch, while they were taking a break from looking through her emails, said, you know what, if we bring charges against her or something, that's probably going to hurt her chances about becoming president. We're really going to be jumping feet first into the presidential campaign, and you know what? I really don't want to deal with that. I'm not saying I'd vote for her. I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for her, but is it really our job to do that? And that's why I continue to say that the smartest thing that Hillary Clinton did was to protect her from any prosecution was running for president. To use the term from those bad years of 2006 to about 2009, Hillary Clinton is too big to fail. And she is big. What's my favorite joke of all time? I'm going to tell you what my favorite joke of all time is. And it's very sexist, but I don't care because it's my show. There's the statement out there, well, Hillary's running, and the way she's campaigning, she's certainly leaving a lot of room to the left and the right of her on the political sphere. And you know what I say to that? I've seen Hillary Clinton. There's no room to the left or the right of her. I know, bad. I know it's bad. I maybe my mother would not appreciate me telling that joke, but my mother doesn't like Hillary Clinton either. So if any of you are watching, if any of you watched, being that you're listening to this now at 11 p.m. Eastern, any of you watched that today, I'm hoping you weren't expecting something more than what you got. And if you were, then you just haven't been paying attention. And in fact, really, I mean, looking at it, the committee, this hearing was over before it started. No, I shouldn't say that. It was over as soon as James Comey said that he thought the statute needed to be changed. It was flawed. As soon as that happened, they should have just all adjourned. But once again, you have some bureaucrat rewriting the law. But I'm going to tell you, I don't even believe it. He believes it. But he'd rather say that, and being that judicial activism has been such in fashion in the last 20 years, that he can get away with saying that because it goes in line with what else has been going on, instead of saying what I believe the truth is that the FBI just doesn't want to deal with it. And that's just something we're going to have to live with. The problem is that all of this, whether she is charged or not, should have been enough to really screw her over from becoming president. Because I think there are at least a few Democrats out there who have watched this, are bothered by this, and are going to actually take it out at the ballot box. Although, as I've told you, most of them don't care. They don't care if she's dishonest. They don't care if she's a liar. They don't care about Benghazi. None of it. The problem we have is that all of you chose to nominate, well, he's not nominated yet, but a guy who's not much different than she is. And dare I say it, if Donald Trump were Secretary of State from 2009 to 2012, he would have done the exact same thing Hillary Clinton did. And he would lie, and he would say, well, I don't know what I'm doing, even though he uses Twitter more than any popular person out there, it seems, anyway. He'd use the exact same tactics, and you would love it. Just because. Just because it ticks the Democrats off and liberals off. And really, in the end, that's the only reason that people support Donald Trump, is because he ticks the other side off. It has nothing to do with principles. It's just about upsetting them. And in that way, Democrats are living in your heads rent-free. That's why I've tried to tell you over and over and over. You do not need to despise somebody to want to beat somebody. You don't need to hate them to beat them. You don't need to be angry about it. All you have to decide is, I should win on principle. They should lose. But you spend so much time about how you're going to make them feel this coming November that you don't understand that you're really just destroying yourself in the process. Do you have to read Moby Dick again? So there's that. And a companion piece to this, kind of, is, I know this is, you know how I love to bring in things from outside of politics and make comparisons. And what I was talking about yesterday, about all of you who continue to root for people who are crooked and who have cheated just so you can feel good about yourself and your team. And then you expect politicians to be pristine and clean as the white as the driven snow. I don't even know what that technically means, driven snow. I don't know. You want everything to be bad in the stuff that you like, but everything that you don't like, you want it to be perfect. Because we know that, in general, I'm not sure how many people really like politics. This story comes from Argentina. It involves what some may say is the greatest soccer player or football, F-U-T-B-O-L, in the world right now, Lionel Messi. People have compared him to Pele, and they've compared him to a lot of other prior great soccer players, and there's no doubt that his stats are impressive, although it seems that his Argentinian team kind of underperforms, and even in the Copa America last week, they lost. And in fact, they went down to penalty kicks, and Lionel Messi actually missed his kick. But still, he plays over in Europe, and over there he's considered to be the best player, and there's always high hopes that Lionel Messi can lead the Argentina to a World Cup victory, even though they haven't won going way, 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 way back since Diego Maradona played for him. Look at me showing off my soccer knowledge. That's a little bit embarrassing. But he has been caught and convicted of tax evasion, like big time, like in the millions. He's been caught, convicted. The sentence, of course, in Argentina is a fine and then jail time, which I think is supposed to be 21 months. You should know that he's not going to ever see. I think his father was involved in this as well somehow. You should know that Lionel Messi is not going to spend a day in jail in Argentina or anywhere else. Now, we know the reasons that he was doing this is because Argentina is a mess. Its tax system is a mess. I'm sure it does not. Its tax system does not reward people who make a lot of money and who create jobs for other people, whether it's a soccer star or somebody who runs a company or business or anything. I'm sure that the people who make the jobs in Argentina are hit hard. And as I like to always remind all of you, that there was a time, even in, when was it? Before World War II, that Argentina was the second most prosperous country in North America and South America. In fact, I think it might have been the second most prosperous country in the Western Hemisphere, which would include Europe, going back to the 1930s, if you can believe that. I know today that sounds crazy, but it was true. And then the Perones came along. Eva Perón, she was so great she got a musical made after her. And her husband destroyed that country, and that country continues to be a mess to this day. So you can understand why Lionel Messi, who just happened to be born there, might have thought, man, I'm making all this money over in Europe playing soccer, and I don't want to pay taxes on it back in Argentina. So he did this, did that to try to get away with it. Now, I want to know something. Being that it seems in this country, we'll just use this country. I'm not going to try to bring Argentinian people in this because not that I don't care what they think, I just don't care what they think. I know that there are a lot of Lionel Messi fans in the United States. A lot of soccer fans in the United States. I saw how, the Copa was played here in the United States. A lot of people showed up to cheer on Lionel Messi. And I'm sure if you ask those people, Are you concerned about elitism in the United States? And these are probably mostly, I'm going to say there's probably some people from Argentina who travel to the United States to watch their team. But I'm going to guess most of the people in those stadiums are American citizens of Argentinian descent or whatever else. I don't care. But if you were to ask them, do you believe that elitism is a problem in the United States? I am absolutely sure that a large majority of them would say yes. I would ask them, are you worried about how the world seems to be run by just these rich people who seem to get away with everything, and then the common man has to pay for everything and has to go to jail? And they would say yes. I would say, do you think that this is the way the world is supposed to be? And they would say yes. And then I'd say to them, so you think that Lionel Messi should go to jail? And you know what they'd say? No. And in those few questions, you see why the world is such a horrible place. It shows a few things. Once again, this is an example that I brought up yesterday that I'm going to continue to bring up, even though it makes a lot of you uncomfortable, because that's what I do here. I'm not going to kiss your butts here. We've been doing that. We as conservatives and conservative media have tried that for 25 years, talking about how great our listeners are and how perfect they are and everything. Well, you know what? 25 years later, we have nothing to show for that. Instead, what we have created are a bunch of arrogant people. Arrogant, self-righteous people. It's about time we start looking at ourselves and the imperfections that we have. Change starts at home. So Lionel Messi, he should go to jail, right? No matter if he's the greatest soccer player in the world, doesn't matter that his Argentinian team will be hurt for the World Cup in 2018. The World Cup, where is in Russia in 2018? Doesn't matter. That's what the law says. Lionel Messi is not above the law. He should go to jail. Argentina's not going to do that. Why? Probably for the same reasons that I'm talking about right here. They want to see Lionel Messi out on the pitch, as they call it. We in the United States call it the field. And they won't think twice about it. But then, as soon as Lionel Messi goes on his way and goes to the next match, these people, soccer fans in Argentina, the United States, and Europe will go about talking about how the elitists in the world suck. Now you see why I don't get caught up in that stuff. I realize that how attractive it can be very, very seductive. You can really, we all know how easily we can just jump into that jealousy, nice warm tub of water and feel good about ourselves, isn't it? Isn't it so nice? How we get to say, woe is me, the average person, and how all these other people get away with stuff. Guess who allows them to get away with it? We do. Lionel Messi is not going to lose any fans because of what he did. Now, I understand he has a perfectly fine reason to try to get out of those taxes. As a conservative, I perfectly understand that. But the law is the law. The law is the law. He's not even going to spend 1 month in a jail. Maybe they could get a compromise. Okay, it's Lionel Messi. He's a national figure. Maybe we need to do something here. We need to take him out of public life for him to remember that he shouldn't do it again for a couple months. Just because they aren't even doing that. We have as average people, and we deify them so much in the United States, maybe in the rest of the world too, that for a bunch of great people, we certainly do have a lot of blind spots, don't we? Blind spots in our value system. Blind spots in our integrity because we're afraid that it's going to get in the way of our fun and our entertainment and our enjoyment. Not realizing is when those things happen, it only exacerbates a bigger problem you're going to have with your country. Remember, in the end, sports don't mean anything. But from sports, other things can happen. You can start to accept things that you shouldn't, like Hillary Clinton. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I just love it when I can get... I don't even care about soccer that much. You know I'm not a fan. I root for the United States men's team and women's team. Truthfully, the women's team too, just because I believe that the United States should win in everything, even if it's a sport that I don't particularly care for. But it's always nice where you can bring soccer into a conversation and talk about it in a negative way, how soccer fans are just going to look past the fact that the number one star in the world is going to get away with tax evasion. I think he's going to pay some money or anything, but he's not going to spend any time in jail. And whatever fines or whatever else he's going to have to pay, he can surely afford. So I don't want to hear any of you talk to me about how elitism stinks in the world when you let people get away with it just because you like them. So moving on, you know, I always bring up this guy. I wish I could give you his name, but I'm not going to. This friend of mine that I talk with him about politics more than anybody in my life. We just email each other back and forth. He sent me a message this morning, and I'm not even sure the reason right at the second, but he remembered a discussion that I had back at the time that Prince died. And somehow I managed to combine Prince dying with all of the problems with populism. Only I would do something like that. And the reason I did that is because when I was looking up, obviously everybody, Prince was very popular. Maybe not as popular as his Purple Rain days, but a lot of people continued to follow him, made a lot of appearances, was still doing concerts. And a lot of his music ended up being on YouTube after being restricted for so many years. Once he died, YouTube kind of slacked off maybe a little bit because he died. And everybody got reinterested in his old catalog. And I was just doing what I was doing, searching facts about Prince, reading about his life. And I discovered that Purple Rain was kept out of the number one slot by Wham. So some point in 1984, a majority of music listeners in the United States and elsewhere thought that Wham and Wake Me Up Before You Go Go was better than Purple Rain. And from that, one of my deductions was, this is the problem with populism. Populism does not look very far ahead. I will tell you, I was 14 at the time. I don't remember liking Wham at all. I remember liking a couple of their songs. I think "Careless Whisper" is still a spectacular, so slow song. I think it's still spectacular. And then there's that other song about All She Wants or something like that, which I think is a fine song. But "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go"? Really? And yes, it kept Purple Rain out of the number one spot. And I managed talking about that. Well, for some reason, this buddy of mine sent that to me this morning and reminded me, talking about that. How long ago was it Prince died? 6 weeks ago? 2 months ago? And I think that is a perfect representation of what I think of when I bring up Lionel Messi. When I bring up people who continue to root for cheaters. And athletes, both female and male, who are cheating just to win. The truth is, people love them. And we maybe should take instead a lesson from the ancient Greeks. And I only know this because my sister told me this because she was in Greece. Was it last year? Or maybe it was earlier this year. Can't even remember now. Time flies by so fast. But she was over there, and she saw all the famous sites. You know, she did all the touristy stuff, and she was there for a while, just she and her husband. She came back with these pictures, and it showed places where statues used to be outside of these stadiums. Now, in Western culture, what do? We erect statues to heroes. You go to PNC Park in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you're going to see a statue of Hannes Wagner. You're going to see a statue of Roberto Clemente. You're going to see a statue of Willie Stargell. And just like you go to any sports venue or around the country, whether it's hockey or baseball, football, you're going to see statues to the men who performed well. And I'm guessing there are some female statues out there too of famous athletes, maybe at tennis venues or golf venues, something like that. We recognize the people who were great. You know what the Greeks did? They did the opposite. So where those statues used to be standing outside the venue, it wasn't of some great javelin thrower or a discus thrower. What else would have been? Would have been a wrestler, I guess way back in ancient times, Greco-Roman wrestling, something like that. You know who they erected statues to? They put up statues of the people who cheated. Why? So people would never forget who they were. How about that? It's certainly a different way, a different point of view regarding if you want to make something last, you want to make people remember something. Some people want to just remember the good stuff, putting up statues to heroes. Other cultures, they want to make sure that people who cheat are not going to be forgotten and they're going to be made fun of and everybody is going to know their name. But in Western culture, what do? In fact, Barry Bonds, cheater that he is on the coaching staff of the Miami Marlins. Mark McGwire is on the coaching staff, I think at one point, I don't know if he's still there, of the St. Louis Cardinals. Maybe he's moved somewhere else, but I know he's involved in Major League Baseball. And I'm sure that if I had a list of other names, I'm sure they're still involved with baseball one way or the other as well. And in fact, the only person who has really lived and continues to be a pariah, in baseball sense anyway, I'm sure you can find this stuff going on in football and other sports as well. Baseball just happens to be on my mind since my Pirates have won 7 in a row. Imagine that. But just don't even think about it. In fact, a lot of these people who have cheated are forgotten. And it's hard to say that the most that any of these people are going to pay, Mark McGwire and the rest of them, are that they won't make it into the Hall of Fame. They're not going to have to give back any of the money they earned. They're not going to be thrown in jail. They're going to still have their houses and their cars, and they're still going to sign autographs, and people are just going to treat them as if they ran into a burning building and saved 10 children. And then we still wonder why politicians are crooked. So, the only guy I was going to say is Pete Rose. Got off on a little tangent there. The only guy who continues to be rejected by Major League Baseball is Pete Rose. And guess what? People still love him. Most people think he should be in the Hall of Fame for having the most hits, among other reasons. He was great for baseball in the 1970s and 80s, and there's no doubt about that. Played baseball the way it should be played. Not the nicest guy in the world. But he was a cheater. He was a gambler. He always said, well, I never voted a bet on my own team, and then he admitted that he did eventually. And people just want to forgive him as if he did nothing wrong. But then they expect their politicians to be perfect. Do you see the contradictions that we have in our culture? Do you see how much this has worked its way? And you know what? There are a lot of good people good conservatives who are pro-gun, pro-life, pro-Bill of Rights, pro-Constitution, pro-low taxes, that it never crosses their mind that any of this stuff exists. And that's really the problem. And then if they do hear that it exists, they're reminded of it by listening to me or somebody else that talks like me, they reject it. They don't want to hear it. Don't get in the way of my narrative. Don't get in the way of my baseball. Don't get in the way of my entertainment. This comes up every time that I talk about conservatives sending their kids to public schools. You know why both liberal parents and conservative parents send their kids to public schools, but for totally different reasons. And this just shows you why liberalism continues to exist. Liberals send their kids to public schools because they like what the public schools teach. They love the diversity training, and they love the courses, and they love the self-esteem courses, and they love that schools reject creationism, and they love that global warming stuffed down kids' throats. Liberals love every bit of it. They love Common Core. They love the federal government being involved in education at every level. They love it. That's why they send their kids there, except for those elitist ones, and they get away with it. Once again, coming back to these double standards. You know why conservatives send their kids to public schools? For the activities. That has to be it. It can't be for the curriculum. They want their son or daughter to be in sports. They want the daughter to be a cheerleader. They want their daughter to be head of the math team. They want her to do this. It's different standards. Meanwhile, their kids' heads are being filled with junk. And in that way, it seems that liberals are much more consistent, no matter how wrong they are, than we are. But we don't talk about that. Rush Limbaugh's not going to talk about that. He's not going to tell his millions of listeners that what they're doing is wrong. He's not going to do that. He has too much gold to sell. He needs to sell reverse mortgages. But I want you to remember all of this when you see Hillary Clinton getting away with it. How is that any different than one of your favorite athletes getting off? And somebody making James Comey's up there making excuses, making this excuse, making that excuse. That's no different than you making an excuse for your team just so it can win the World Series or the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup or the NBA Finals. It's all the same, and it all sucks. I gave you the example of this past Pittsburgh Steelers season. I can't tell you how many people thought I was crazy for not watching the Steelers last year. Just because Michael Vick was on the team, a dog killer. Meanwhile, these Pittsburgh fans, if they found out a dog killer lived next door, they'd erect a wall so high that even Donald Trump would say, dang. But they'll watch Pittsburgh Steelers on TV. Do you understand why that doesn't make any sense to me? I realize nobody's perfect, but when you murder animals for fun, isn't there a line somewhere, even if you are regretting it later? Does he really, truly regret it? We don't know what's in his heart. You choose to believe it because you want to watch football. Liberals, they choose to go along with Hillary Clinton because they want her to be president. How is it any different? You want to cheer on Lionel Messi because you want to watch great soccer. Doesn't matter that he evaded taxes to the total of millions of dollars. You want your stuff. And then you expect the United States to be perfect. I don't know how that's... I just don't see how any of this can continue. I'm not saying the United States is going to end tomorrow or next week or next year. It's just these kinds of hypocrisy through our entire culture cannot continue, and the United States continue to be a country made up of 50 independent states with borders and everything else. It just can't. And in that way, I mean, and this is not the first time this has been said, in that way, it is kind of a little bit like Rome. And much as that analogy is made like a million times comparing ancient Rome to the United States. That we can build a lot of great roads and we can send our armies here and armies there and can conquer, but we can't behave ourselves within the walls of our own country. This is by the way, this is one of the problems I have with libertarians. Is that I'm not so sure in their minds that they think that morals matter. That they think only economics matter and everything else will take care of itself. I don't particularly believe that. And all these examples I've given you in the show are examples of why. Rome convinced itself that they didn't need to be moral. All we need to do is conquer. All we need to do is build roads and fences and do this and do that. We're going to build these great aqueducts, and they're bringing water into Rome, and it's like nothing you've ever seen before, and it was all spectacular, except the people sucked. They'd have been much better off being moral people and having no technological advances. Remember that. Let's move on to something else. And I remind you that this will be my last news show until next Monday. Gretchen Carlson at Fox News. Once again, is this emblematic of what I've been talking about this whole show? Gretchen Carlson, I didn't know this because, as you know, I don't watch Fox News. I don't have cable. I actually have to really go out of my way to find news to watch online. She's involved in a sexual harassment suit. She's brought a sexual harassment suit against Roger Ailes in Fox News. She claimed that she was harassed. And you can already see, I didn't even know that she was fired. I guess it's been a while. I didn't even know. And the battle lines have been drawn. If you go to one conservative site to the other, some people are taking her side, some people are taking Roger Ailes' side, and it usually kind of broken down along political lines, whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump or what you think of Fox News and whether you watch it anymore. And I'm not there. I don't know what went on. I would have to guess. Just going to do a little theorizing. We do a little theorizing on on our America's Missing podcast as well, trying to predict what actually happened to these people who went missing. I'm going to do a little theorizing here as well. And I don't think it's going to paint. And what you find is that in both these camps, they either want to paint Gretchen Carlson as the horrible one or Roger Ailes as the horrible one. And it all, once again, comes back to Fox News and how they've kissed Trump's butt for the last year. I prefer to think of it this way. Having been in a few circumstances like this in my life, and you should know in entertainment, you can get away with what you would call sexual harassment a lot more than in other, I'm going to say, and when I mean sexual harassment, I mean kidding around. I don't mean sexual assault or anything like that, but you can be a little bit more catty about sexual innuendos and things. Because that's how artistic people are, and that's what makes it so funny, how liberals want to crack down on all this kind of speech when most liberals are in entertainment. And I've seen how they act. I mean, it's hard to not make sexual innuendos when women are running around you in nothing but thongs and stuff, as I experienced when I lived in Las Vegas, a couple jobs that I have. It's tough not to be that way. And you know what? The women love the attention, and I think that's what was going on at Fox News. I'm going to guess that Gretchen Carlson, who is a beautiful woman, probably liked maybe some of the comments that Roger Ailes and some of the other guys there at Fox News have made about either her butt or her legs or anything else. And she loved it until it wasn't convenient for, and granted, that's a little bit different than entertainment. These are supposed to be professionals, And I would hope that that wouldn't go on, but I'm sure that it did. And she was perfectly willing to put up with it as long as she got what she wanted. So the guys that were doing this to her were wrong. Can't you just... Do you not have wives and things? Do you not have daughters? This is supposed to be professional news, biggest news organization in the United States, most popular anyway. But in Gretchen Carlson's case, I'm going to guess that she liked it until she didn't like it. In which she got moved from the morning show to the afternoon show, and then she had problems with one of her co-hosts, and then suddenly all that fun stuff that was fun at one time, well, it's not so fun anymore. And now suddenly she's offended by it. And you would think that Roger Ailes and the rest of them, who claimed, to be the smartest people in TV, would know that they shouldn't be doing this stuff. Because you open yourself up to something like this. Whereas it's just a bunch of struggling artists in Las Vegas running around. You can't sue somebody else when they don't have anything. And you're a bunch of nobodies like we were. But in this high-stakes game, where people are making millions of dollars and millions, if not billions of dollars are on the line, you can't be doing this stuff. They should have been treating Gretchen Carlson like a professional woman and made none of those comments so this doesn't happen. On the other hand, Gretchen Carlson, probably the first time they said something, should have stopped them. Or, as I've seen women do, she might have even asked, how do I look in this dress today, guys? And then they feel free to comment. You got to stay away from that stuff. As a guy, you have to learn, you got to stay away from that stuff. So I'm guessing there's Gretchen's story, there's Roger Ailes' story, and then there's the real story. And that's why I hesitate to take anybody's side on this. However, I did ask a friend of mine, is what we're seeing kind of a little bit of the... I said the downfall, but I know Fox News isn't going anywhere because of Donald Trump or because of this or... It's not going anywhere. It continues to have viewers. It continues to make millions and billions of dollars. It's not going anywhere. But has Fox News gotten a little dirty within the last year? And I don't mean dirty as in sexual or something. Just has it tarnished its image in the last year? I believe it has. Between its Trump stuff, between this, between, having, Sarah Palin as a spokesman one time, and I just don't know what. I swear to God that Invasion of the Body Snatchers came down and took the real Sarah Palin away. She is nuts. She is officially nuts now. Is it that? Is it Sean Hannity with all of his attacking of his fellow conservatives because they don't like Donald Trump, and Bill O'Reilly and Greta Van Susteren and all of that? It certainly seems to have gotten a little bit bad very fast. And I'm sure those on the left who have wanted Fox News to step in it, they're certainly enjoying it. And I barely watched Fox News when I did have TV. So if it were to suffer a downfall or anything, I know I'd be fine. The problem is I think a lot of people think it wouldn't be fine. And I think maybe that's why they keep watching, even though Fox News has given a lot of people reasons not to watch within the last year, especially if you're conservative. I want you to think about that. But I got to go. You can find all of my old Red State Talk radio shows at edwarddentzel.com. You can find them also at Podomatic, Podbean, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Although I may be a little behind that this weekend, being that I'll be otherwise engaged. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain. Find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Told you about my other show that I do with Melissa Bridges. Show's America's Missing Podcast. You can hear it on the Encore channel this weekend on Red State Talk Radio. You can also find that at Podomatic and iTunes. You can find my books at Amazon.com. Just do a search for my name. That's it. I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope I have a great weekend playing. And I'll talk to you again on Monday. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.